I know that Tom has been there several times. Anybody else? North Carolina, just outside of Tennessee. Ron, you've been there? Anybody else? Bill, okay, great. So several of you have been there, and I want to just tell you a little bit about it in case you ever think, well, do I want to go? So there it is. It's in North Carolina. It's in Brasstown. Brasstown is the middle of nowhere. It's located kind of in the middle of some of the smaller mountains that are around there. It's a beautiful area, lots of open area and scenery around. The weekend that I arrived, there was a craft fair. And even though Brasstown is in the middle of nothing and you go, where are all these people coming from? This was like Festival of the Little Hills in St. Charles. It was a huge event. There were thousands of people. They parked the cars throughout the fields, and they were vendors set up all over the grounds and milling about and selling their wares. And then they disappeared come Sunday afternoon. They got a huge barn there for displays, and they also used a lot of the classrooms. So when you go, they have weekend events, but most of them are for like a week-long event when you're going to be there. Most people stay on ground. Some people bring campers and stay, but they also provide different types of housing. Some of them are like in houses that are on the left there. I was in the one in the upper right. It's kind of an octagonal structure. We had 6 rooms that were set up in that building, 3 upstairs, 3 downstairs. The bedding accommodations are either singles or doubles. I had a double, but fortunately I did not have anybody with me. I would have driven him crazy by the hours that I kept, I think. So, and unless you're an instructor and have a private bathroom, you share a bathroom. So you got a bathroom down the hall. Never was a problem because nobody seemed to keep the same hours, so people were in and out. They serve you food. You get 3 meals a day, whether you like it or not. And believe me, it was a very interesting menu. I don't know if you can see that one. Breakfast, pretty standard, biscuits and gravy. But for lunch, there was red lentil soup with some kind of Mexican cornbread and a chorizo. They're crisp. And then for dinner, we were going to have chicken and Brussels sprouts and fresh bread. So you didn't have to like it, but you never went hungry. And believe me, by the time the next meal came along, you were ready to eat Brussels sprouts, whether you liked them or not. They also had a vegetarian menu that if you wanted to go that way. They had a great salad bar. So, and there was a lot of camaraderie around the table because that's where your class would get together and shoot the bull during lunch. You could start the day earlier than just breakfast if you wanted to. They had different events. Sometimes there was storytelling. They would bring people in to play music, a lot of mountain music with different instruments and different ways to handle it. There was also events in the evening where a lot of the instructors would do a special class, like you might have one on jewelry. Our instructor gave some instruction on wood turning one night. I went to marbling one night. So there's a variety that you can go to. These are some of the classrooms. This is the one on the bottom right with the green roof. That was our new turning building. It's a great facility. The classrooms are located all over the ground. Some of them, though, from the cafeteria to the classroom could be a half-a-mile hike. So the blacksmith shop was down the hill. So if you want to do blacksmithing, get ready to hustle. So I was drawn to this class. You know, there were a lot of different ones that were offered. I was drawn to John Keaton's class because I was interested in embellishments. And John, to me, was a real artist. And his focus was on the golden rule and Fibonacci and transitions, making everything smooth. That was our class. The instructor there is on the right-hand side with the green tag. That's John Keaton. John was a retired attorney, and he always had some interesting stories, either whether he's talking about the courtroom or whether he's talking about attorney. And he had an assistant there, Bob Harrison. Bob is right to the left of me. But great class, variety of a full range of turning capabilities. Everybody was not a pro. This is our shop, fully equipped shop. They had dust extraction. The dust extractor was outside, so it wasn't terribly noisy. They do provide tools, but you can also bring your own tools if you want. We had to clean the shop up twice a day before we had lunch. Everything was swept up, put into barrels, and then we could go eat lunch. For our instructor, he provided blanks, which he sold to us, and the supplies, most of the finishing supplies were provided by either him or the school. So a day, typically, you'd go eat breakfast, you'd come down, you'd start turning about 9 o'clock. You'd turn to close to lunch. You go get your Brussels sprouts, you eat those. You come back about 1 o'clock. You turn to 5 o'clock. You go get supper. And then, depending on the instructor, you may or may not come back and turn in the evening. So, you know, you eat 5, by 6:30, you're ready to come back. You turn till 9 o'clock. You go shower, crash, get up the next morning and repeat. It was fantastic. By the end of the week, I was so enthused about turning. That's all I wanted to do, but then I had to come back and work. So, I mean, it's a great experience. I encourage anybody, if you get the opportunity, take advantage of it. So at the end of the week, you had a show and tell. Those are the 2 bowls that I turned there. I have to tell you that when I started, my first day, I went into a panic and I go, I don't know if I can finish this bowl within a week. But John kept us going, and by the end of the week, I was able to finish 2 of them. If you go, I know Tom drives down, but I flew down. I knew I had a suitcase with just my tools and some space to bring back what I was going to turn. You got to do some planning because you want to turn more, but you got to realize, how am I going to get this on the airplane and do it? Want to pay an extra $50 to have it sent to me. So a lot of different classes, jewelry, cloth weaving. Down there in that lower left-hand side were the knives made by the blacksmith class. We actually had a lady at our table who was a friend of one of my classmates who was in the blacksmithing class. So those are the 2 bowls that I turned down there. You can tell from the bottom curve that that's what John was looking for. He wanted that Fibonacci curve. You don't make a hemisphere. It's got to start straight and then come sweeping around, come back up. You got to get your proportions right with the max width of your bowl and figure out where it's going to intersect up there with your lid. And then, of course, the lid had to have another Fibonacci curve in it also. So, but we're going to talk about platters because maybe sometime I'll do a lidded bowl. Tom might want to do one on his lidded button bowls. John also went through turning off-center tilted platters, which I thought was a phenomenal thing to do. I was easily impressed by it. So how many turners out here have done platters? Just a simple platter. Okay. So, you know, when you're turning a platter, basically you're going to put something into the face side, the upside, put that on there, turn probably a recess in the bottom, then flip it around, put the recess on your chuck, and then turn out the rest of the top of your platter. So that works pretty well. So if you want to do an offset platter, so what are you going to do there? This is kind of like show and tell. Right, so you got to have at least 2 points so that you can turn something off center. So you could start off, you could drill 2 holes in the front of it, use that with your worm, turn one, turn a recess in the back, turn that, remount, put the second worm screw in, get the off center part, turn another recess in the back side. Now you got 2 recesses, what are you going to do? Well, you can put it in your cold jaws, flip it around, and totally encompass those 2 recesses that you've made into one and make that your foot. So now you can do an off-center platter. So the question is, how are you going to add tilt to that? Well, I've seen some of the ways that you tilt them is you take it in your chuck and you hedge a little bit so that you don't really have the jaws meeting all the time, or the face is not up against the piece. That will tilt it. Everything I've been taught says that's not the way to go. You're going to end up picking it up like I did Wayne's face back there and dropping it on the floor. The piece is going to come out of your chuck. So John had this procedure, and I think it's great. You could do it with a vacuum chuck, there's no doubt. But if you don't have a vacuum chuck, you need a process to do it. So we want to turn multiple axes that are both offset and tilted, and they're going to do a bunch of arcs so that I don't know if you can tell how much tilted and offset, but we're going to end up with a piece like that. That's okay. That's fine. We'll pick it up later, Rob. So the secret of this thing is the faceplate jig. It's very simple, but it's the first thing you make so that you can do this. Depending on the platter size that you want to turn, if you're turning a platter of about 10-inch diameter, you start with a disc that's about 5 inches. You're going to make a recess or a tenon on the back side. And on the front side, you're going to dish it out. So basically, once it's dished out, the rim is the only thing that's going to make contact with the platter that you're going to turn. And you're going to put that recess or tenon into your chuck on the headstock. Now, I'm going to go through this with everybody. These are the steps that I'm going to go through. John Keaton did this on the first night of class. And he went through the whole process of what we're going to do during the week and how we were going to turn that lidded bowl. So I found that to be a good learning experience. I wanted this to be more than just a demo. I'm hoping you learn as we go and you can give it a try. So the first thing we're going to do once we've got that faceplate jig made and we're ready to go that way is we take our rough out piece. We're going to mount it as a friction fit to the lathe. We're going to put the head stock to the top of it and bring up the tail stock to hold the bottom side of the platter. Then we're going to turn a recess in the bottom, just like you would with a standard platter. And then we're going to dome the outside of the back. And we're doing that dome. You're going to have to take your mask off. I can't. I will either include the notes in the newsletter or I will put them on the website as a link under demonstrators. So it'll be out there. So we're going to do a friction fit. We're going to put the head or the front of the platter against the headstock, bring up the tail stock, hold it there. We're going to turn a recess in the center. And then we're going to dome that backside. And that's so as we move that platter around on that jig that we made, it's going to give us the off-centeredness, and it's going to give us the tilt to the platter at the same time. Then we're going to flip that piece around and mount the backside in the chuck and cut a recess in the front side now for holding it when we flip it back and forth. Once it's in the chuck, we're then going to turn that initial rim, which is going to be turned on center. We're going to kind of wrap that to the back so we know where the rim is going to be. And then we're going to start adding some accents and cutting down to get depth. You can't tell that outside rim. So once you turn this outside rim, then you start cutting in to gain depth. Once we gain that depth, we're going to put a convex shape, and you'll see this on some future charts on the next piece, but we're going to leave the middle as it is so that we've got some strength there when we start chucking it. Important thing is to sand as you go. If you've got any nicks and notches and things you want to get rid of and you can't do it with your tool, do your sanding now, because chances are on center you may be able to go back and pick it up. When we get off center, it gets tougher and tougher to sand. So there it is with mounting on the headstock. I've got the faceplate in there. That's the little piece on the left. And I'm bringing the tailstock up to support it. And usually about 3/4 of an inch on the front is sufficient to give you quite a bit of wobble on this platter. And so that's about all you need. You can see at this point, we're not screwed into anything. It's just held up there by the tailstock. So if I don't like the position, I've got some kind of a flaw in the piece I want to get rid of, I can still move things around. It's kind of like using a step sander. Once I feel comfortable there, I'm going to draw a line on it. So I know where that jig's going to go on the backside, take it off, and I'm going to screw it to the platter itself. We're just going to use some drywall screws. Everybody says you can't use drywall screws, but you can in this case because it's not structural. Everything is going to be held up there with the tailstock and a friction fit. These are there just so that jig doesn't move around from where we place it. So once we get that piece up there, now this has got the piece mounted so that it's sort of eccentric. And you can tell that it's off center a little bit. We're going to start cutting in from that dome. You know, we made that convex curve up there in the dome. We're going to start cutting in with a slight concave. And we're going to cut till we get to just about the end of the dome on the other side. But since everything is skewed, it won't be symmetrical. Maybe it'll be obvious as we go through this thing. So we'll see if this thing whistles on me. Okay, so we've got that dome that's in there, and we're going to start our cut right here at the first of the dome, and we're going to end up. Now, I will tell you that when that little platter is flipping around there, there's no way I can tell where that cut's going to be. So what we do is put a piece of tape on the tool rest, and we're going to mark, here's where I'm going to start my cut, here's where I'm going to stop my cut. That helps. So you can see the concave and convex surfaces there and the way they're cut in. Then once we get that one done on the front, then we're going to flip it around. Now we've got a recess in the front. We're going to hold it on the chuck, and we're going to finish off the bottom, adding the foot, adding any kind of embellishments there that we want. Once we get the bottom finished, we'll flip it around again. Now we're going to finish the front, and we're going to do the center, which is going to be on center again. And there's a lot of different ways you can finish that. You can dome it, you can texture it, you can hollow it out, you can burn it, multitude of different ways. That's kind of a dome center that you got. This is some of John's turnings that he did. You can tell how he's enhanced the backside, but he's really good at embellishing the front side. And I'll go through the technique that he uses on that upper left. And Jim, Dwayne, you're a master of wood burning, man. You might want to do this. You could do some of your wood burning right there in the center to really bring it out. He did a lot with pictures, you know, print them on your inkjet, put those on there. Dwayne has done a lot of those, and then transfer those to that. So thanks go to John. I asked him if I could use some of his charts and pictures, and he said, sure, no problem. Thanks also to Wes out here. I had a lot of big stock, but I didn't have platters and all that, and so Wes was able to give me some. Okay, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. All right, Rob, let's give this a try. So does everybody know what a center finder is? You used those before. Handy tool. I make a rough cut of the platter, whatever I'm going to turn. I can locate the center on one side because that's what I use to draw the circle. The question is, where is it on the back side? These little gizmos work slick. You just hook that on there, draw a line, move it around, draw another line. There you go. Why is he drawing several lines? Well, if you don't have a really good circle, like some of it's outside here, you'll get a variety of places where these cross. Not a problem. You just pick something that looks like it's about the middle of it. Gives you a darn good start on where you're going to go. And bingo, I've got a mark right there where.
Charlie, we're not getting any pictures out here. Charlie, no pictures coming through. There you know. Now we're getting pictures.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see that I get my point right there in the center. All right. So ready to go. I got the stem center located in the headstock. Put that up there. Bring a tailstock pretty close. Wow. That turned so much easier than my Nova. My Nova, I got to fight that tailstock. That's close. So you may want to adjust these just a little bit. That's worse. You'd think both centers should line up, but sometimes they don't. Turn around. Getting there. I don't have to have it true. I'll true it up anyway once I get started. All right, we'll go with that, and I'll just true up the edges as we go. Lock that baby in. If you guys see me doing anything stupid, take your mask off and yell at me. I don't have a Powermatic. I have my Nova, which I really like. So I may do something out of the ordinary here. All right, first thing we're going to do is just true up this edge so that we got a good disc. See how this goes. We on the overhead? Okay. I think I'm going to true up that face a little bit first. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Maybe I started off with a tilted off slider to start with. I just don't know. Everything clears. Well, pull cut just kind of.
We keep losing the picture. Rob, we're not getting any picture on the Zoom.
Well, push cut, I don't know how much you guys do it, but I do a lot of cutting on the wings. I'll clean up this side a little bit too.
I
Get rid of some of that vibration.
To mute.
Okay. All right, so like I said, we got this up there. We could jam this against a chuck and everything, but it's already in there tight with the stem center. So we don't have to take it off. We're just going to go ahead and cut a recess here on the backside. So question is how big of a recess you want to cut. So, you know, you try to emphasize you don't want the chuck jaws to be open more than they need to be. You want them close to that circle as you can. So what I found is that, you know, if I just put my pencil up here and I mark, I don't know, are we on a tailstock view or where are we now? I don't know. I'll let your choice as you move around. But if I mark that with a pencil, laying on my rotating live center there, that pretty much tells me the minimum diameter of my chuck. So I can come in here now and cut a recess, and I know that that's going to be pretty close. I'm going to do an expansion on this thing. So bedans, everybody uses a bedan. It's just like a large parting tool, but I found it very convenient to make recesses and tenons. It cuts just about the right size. Want some good crisp corners there. Now, so when you're making your cuts for your tenon, you know, you want the chuck jaws to grab everything. So there's a visual. So if I've got the recess cut in here like this, and I got my chuck jaws coming up to grip that. Ideally, you know, you match up so that those rest right there on that piece that you cut, and they're going to expand out. If you got them so that they're tapered like a dovetail, then you're going to make this. But the important thing is that when you make that cut and you're coming around the edges, you don't want that, right? Because your chuck jaw is going to come up here and it can rotate right into that void right there. So if anything, what you want to do in there, if you don't make it square, is to turn it a little bit like that. So this way, when the chuck jaws rock, they're going to hit something before they come off. So if you can't get it perfectly square, undercut it a little bit so that you got your chuck coming up there like you need it. Famous last words. We'll see what I got. Oh. All right, so we got that recess cut. What we're going to do now is we're going to dome the backside. We're doming that so that we can get the jig in there to give us some tilt. A little tool cut. I'm not going to take all the wood off clear to the edge. I'm going to leave some of that bulk of the wood on the outside. But I am going to try to make a dome. Closing the flute as I come out here. So the more dome I have there, the more tilt I'm going to get from a platter. We're going to call that for demonstration purposes. And it has to be at least the 5-inch diameter, you know, so I can move that thing around. If I'm turning a smaller platter, I'm going to make a smaller faceplate, 3-inch, 2-inch, whatever you need. It's just important that it, you know, makes the contact for the friction hold. All right, so we should be good to go there. Check my notes. Another thing you can do, I usually judge by the off-centeredness on the front side, but if you want, you can draw some circles on the back. It'll give you an idea how far off center you are once you start positioning this thing. All right. We got a recess, we got it domed. You'll see how close I came on the chuck size. So tighten those babies down a little bit. I got plenty big. I'm going to do the expansion into it. So once I get pretty close and it's holding up there, bring up the tailstock, put a little pressure on it. That's going to jam it in. So I've got a good tight fit with the recess. I don't know, it's probably overkill, but I go through these, tightening these things 2 or 3 times. I don't know, it's engineering, Tom, you know, ultimate factor and things like that. There may be a little bit of give in your scrolls, so you can walk it around. All right. Pardon? Oh, Vic Mark, yeah. I like that. It's a nice little shot. Okay, so now we've got the front sight out here. The first thing we're going to do, before I get, is we're going to turn a recess in the center again, and that's going to be for the time when we flip it back and forth. All right, I'm in the chuck, so I should be okay. I don't need the tailstock up there right now. Kind of just in my way. Probably get Turner's elbow from it or something like that. All right, so all right. Not a good fit. Okay, here we go. I'm going to raise my tool rest just a little bit. I do like this speed control on the Powermatic. My crazy Nova, I got to shut the thing off each time. I don't have the speed control. All right, this is awkward. We're going to try this. Tell you what, I'll bring that up a little bit. Bear with me. I'm going to mark this one also so that I kind of have an idea of where I want to go. Here's another handy tool from Harbor Freight. I spend a lot of my time shopping here. These digital calipers. They go from inches to millimeters to fractions. Which is good. I know that it's about 1.8. My pencil mark was not too good there, so we're going to do this. I'm going to set this at about 1.9. That's when I'll bring up speed. Hopefully engage just the left-hand side. So that falls when the right-hand side lines up, and that's about where I want to go. So cutting a recess in the front now. So far, we're just like turning the platter, right? Nothing special here. Clean that up with my Badan. Okay. So next thing we're going to do is turn the first rim or decoration that we've got on the outside. Everything is on center. I'm going to finish truing up this edge. I don't think it's not there yet, and I got some chip out, so we'll see how that goes. But over here. Everything's clear. Well, I still got it in the chuck. It's probably a good idea for safety. Bring it up. Everything's mounted in the chuck, so it should be good. Always better to be safe. Thank you. Sounds better. Okay. I cleaned it up a lot. Got it smooth, so. All right. So we're going to go ahead and make this rim on the outside next. We'll leave the tailstock up there for support. So we're gonna basically turn this so that I know where I'm gonna go there. Probably just go ahead and put a mark on it to give me an idea how far around I want to wrap. So I'm going to make my first cut here and go in for a little bit of depth. I got rid of that chip out. I didn't think I'd get rid of it that quick. All right. I'm going to go ahead and just get a little more depth on this one. At about 1500 RPM. Is Jesse still online with the Zoom? Can you tell? Jesse? He'll just show that. Yeah, Jesse's online. I want to just a quick segue before I get too far. Before I went down to J.C. Campbell, I spent a good part of the week sharpening my tools. I wanted to be the star of the class, right? Walk in, show John how good I am. So I put those babies on my Tormac and I had them sharpened down as good as I could go. I went to my leather wheel and I went to my honing compounds, and those babies you could see your face in, you could shave the hair off your arm. So we start turning, and this is for Jesse because Jesse had some issues with somebody telling him his sharpening wasn't right. So Jesse, this is for you. I went in and John came around. He looked at my tools and he tried a little bit and he said, "God, those are terrible." My first day of class, I'm devastated, you know? They were sharp, but they had a lousy grind on them. And thanks to John's coaching, you know, he didn't just leave it there. He took me the next step. They were too darn aggressive. They were going to bite in. They were going to dig. So it's important not just to have them sharp, but it's important to have the right grind on it too. So heck, a good finish on it. I mean, if I wanted to, I would come in here and I would sand it and get it shaped up. The other thing you want to do as you go, maybe you want to do some enhancement. So as that's being cut down there, on that first rim. We could put in we could put some texture marks in there. Maybe I want to slow it down. This is for you, Danny, with all your texture tools and everything. I mean, I can take that and I can any kind of enhancement I want to put in there. I don't know, Rob, if you can see that. It did pick up some texturing. If you can't tell, you can check it later. But what I like to do is once I do any texturing like that, I like to set it off with a skew mark on both sides that really tends to accent it. I use a lot of burn marks on my stuff. I don't know if you guys like to, but you can use a burn wire, that works fine, but it's kind of hard to get your wire in there and make it work. You can use a piece of hardwood. I use a piece of Formica samples that I picked up at Home Depot or Menards. Put those babies in there till they smoke. I don't know, I like the way it's kind of like doing black marks on your other turnings to really make that enhance and pop out. I still get quite a bit of thickness there. I'm going to take this dome and I'm going to round it off a little bit more. It's kind of a bad dome. So I want to make that a convex cut right there. Everything's still clear, we're still on center. Making that a convex cut through there. I like the way this thing breaks too. I don't know, my Nova just tends to go forever. Got more burn marks in my hands from slowing her down. Okay, so if you can tell, there's kind of a convex cut right there. We got our dome. So what we're going to do now is shift this thing around and think about making our next cut, which is going to be off center and tilted. Let me check my notes, make sure we're doing it. We got that. We got our recess. We got the first cut. All right. So we're going to mount the faceplate. I always have to remember what's an innie and what's an outie if we're compressing or we're expanding. So we're going to put the faceplate jig on the headstock. I don't know if you guys do this too, but whenever I first make something, and I will figure out which number one jaws is, or pick a number that you want to go with all the time. And then I put a mark on the piece that I'm going to be putting in there if it's going to be on a repeated basis, even if it's just one that I'm going to do 1 or 2 times. But then I tend to try to get that location in the chuck jaws each time. So there's my number one jaws. I've got these black marks on it, and I can come in here. I don't know if it helps or not, but it may help things stay a little bit more aligned. Case like this, it doesn't really matter. We're trying to get something tilted off center anyway, so tighten it up. Okay. So now I'm going to bring my platter back up there. So we're on the back side, we've got the dome. So I can slide that around and reposition this platter off center as far as I want to go, whenever I hit the limit. And the curvature is going to be what gives me my tilt. So just for the heck of it, let's see how that lines up. I'm looking for about 3/4 of an inch here in the front. Bring up the tailstock. That's probably all I want to deal with. I don't know about Bushel, but he ought to be worrying about it's going to come off. All right, so that looks pretty good. I got so many circles back there. I'll just draw another one on with a different color. So now I know where I want to position this thing. Take it off. That gives me the flexibility to position it. So if I didn't screw it down initially. All right. So now we're going to line this up with the circle. Some screws in there just to keep it from moving around. Most of the time, you can turn these screw holes out, depending on the thickness of the platter and whatever you're working with. If you can't, fill them with wood, glue. I like to use copper powder, anything to just give it an accent, make it part of the piece as you go. Once again, these are not intended to be structural. We're just keeping this piece in place as I move it around. So we're going to go back into the chuck. Got jaw number 1 up there. Okay. Spin it around a little bit because things are going to be different now. So you got to make sure if you had a really big platter and you're off center, you may be hitting the banjo or something like that. So, you know, spin this thing around, make sure you're clear, make sure your tool rests, everything is going to clear because you're going to get wobble coming out. Doesn't work. So we're going to move it. All right. So you remember what I said about the tape? So we know where we're going to be cutting. So if this thing is flying around here, it's hard to tell where it's going to be because the wood is so similar and everything. So by taking a piece of tape, so I'm going to bring this around. So the dome that I created here, when I get that to be at the maximum over here, you can tell right in there's the maximum. So that's the peak of my dome. Rotate it 180. That's going to be the bottom of my dome. So there's the end of it. So it's going from there to there. And I want to leave some of that. So I'm going to pull up short somewhere in here when I start coming out of the bottom side. All right. Everybody hold your breath. There's my initial cut coming in right here. So here we go. Stand back till I bring it up to speed. The whole way is not shaking this crazy Say what? Oh, I was up to about 900. It's just that this tool rest is not secured and it vibrates. Something like this at home, I would typically turn at about 1400. All right, I'm going to come in here at this first cut. I'm going to try to make a little concave cut. I don't want that faster. Come on. Okay, let's see what we can get. Well, all right, let's take a look, see what we got. So I've made my entrance cut here, and you can see that I started in on this convex cut that was there, and I'm going to come out there. And I haven't come in just as far. I'm going to go in a little bit more right in here. All right, there's about 1320. Pick up that cut. I'm going to go in and I'm going to make another convex cut coming out of it. Taking it some depth. Here we go. Which do we pick it up or what are we on? Tailstock? Yeah, okay. So here's where I picked it up. I came in, leaving this bulk material right in here. I'm going to take that in just a little bit further and see how it looks down here. It's your design. Once you start, you just go where you want. Actually, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to start in from the back side and come forward a little bit. Close the flute as I come down there in the bottom. Do a little bit of shear scrape coming out. You know, it doesn't do any good to blow the dirt away when you got your mask on. It bounces back up into your microphone. Yeah. I don't know how many times I do that. A little shear scrape, clean it up a little bit. Cuttings look pretty good. Okay, I like that. I come down, I cleaned up, clear into there. The cut's not bad. So this is where, if you wanted to, this would be the time to sand this and make any modifications you want there. Same time, just like we textured on the first cut that we did. If you add some other cuts to this, helps add the illusion of depth. So I'm gonna see if I can put a couple of skew marks in there. One right at the bottom. I will say that it's harder to put the Formica in there after you start making these tilted cuts because it tends to jump around a little bit. That just added a little bit of depth and texture, you know, do with that as you want. So we got the second one made. Now, at this point, what are we doing? If I'm doing a larger platter, I will go in there and take the jig, I'll take it loose, take the screws out of it. I will remount it into another tilted, twisted axis, and I will turn that one before I go back and turn the center out of these things. Depends how you want to finish the center, whether you want the center to be a little bit bigger, what kind of focal point you want to go for. For the purpose of demonstration, you got the hang of this. I mean, we do the same thing. So now we're going to proceed like we're going to make our final cut. So for that, we're going to have to take this out and we're going to mount the face of it and the chuck. Any of these with the replaceable center pans, I got this at Woodcraft. they were always ending up on my shop floor somewhere in the sawdust. And I got these little magnets that even if it comes out, it tends to grab onto it. So magnet just fits right up into that hole, stays put in there. It works pretty well. That's where's Steve? That's my tip for the day, Steve. So, I just picked up a bunch of little earth magnets at Harbor Freight. They come in, yeah, well, it's the cheapest place I found. They come in a little tube and they're just the right size. So be sure to tell them I sent you, John, when you go, so I get my discount. So take the screws out, remove the faceplate jig. So those screw holes are in there pretty much in wood that we may remove as we go. So we're going to be okay. So now we're going to take the face and we're going to bring it up. We're going to clean up the bottom now, right? So we'll expand into that. So we're back on the bottom. We're going to leave this recess in there because we'll need it when we flip it around again and start cleaning up the front. But what we're going to do is take the wood out here. We're going to clean up this outer rim and we're going to give it a little bit of shape to the bottom, give it some character. We're back on center, nothing's twisting around anymore. That's good. Okay. I'll bring it up again around 1400 RPM. There's 1300. I'm going to get rid of some of this wood out here first. A little pull cut, whatever your favorite cut is. Push if you want. Push cut, those shavings get awful hot on my hand. So I decide, what do I want for a foot? You can be artsy craftsy or whatever and go to 30%. I think a good sized foot's going to be something about there. Bring the body to the back. Trying to get a little Fibonacci in here with a little double curve. There, a little ogive. Looking at the curve that we've got when you cut. You're cutting down here, but you got to look up there because you can't see squat down below. So clean up this rim a little more. Spot, don't stop, right? Plenty of wood through there. That's good. Got a lot of wood there in the center, so we can use that. I'm going to do a little shear scrape right out here just to kind of clean this thing up. Come in, drop the handle. Get a good stand. Pull it toward me. A little texturing right there that I didn't want. Huh? Anytime a whistle's on there like that, it should be something. Not too bad. Screw holes in there. I'm just going to leave those. No big problem. Clean up that foot a little bit. Okay, this would be the time we go in, we sand this off, get it smooth, get everything rounded on the edges like we want. Going to have to do something with that center foot. I got to leave the foot so I can reverse it to turn the other front side, but I don't want a double hump in there. Table or something like that, I don't want that bump to be there. Just like whenever you turn the bottom of a bowl or something like that, you tend to make it concave on the bottom so that it doesn't wobble when you put it on the table. That's what we're going to do here. We're just going to clean up this little foot. If you want to call it a foot anymore. We really got the foot is out here now. But I'm going to make sure that it's below. I'm going to leave it in there. I don't want to take it all away. Take a little more off that thing. Okay. We'll come back with our texturing tool. Texturing tools cover up a multitude of sins, don't they? I mean, if you get a surface that you can't clean up, then you texture it. Nobody's going to know, right, Tom? I love this one. Someday I'm going to invest in the big one. So it makes much better designs. If you look at the pattern that Tom has on some of the button bowl, I think I asked you about that one. It is really pretty. I mean, it's like a little flower or something. A big tool really makes a nice texture. So I'm just going to come in here, slow it down a little bit. Something around 500 RPM maybe. Yeah. What he's saying is this thing comes with the brass knob, and you need to put it over here because if you put it on the other side, it unscrews itself when you bring it up. So, right? Is that what you're pointing? And this thing also comes with the teeth sharp on one side and beveled on the other, so to give you an indication of which way to pull it. Let's see a spiral in the middle. Yeah, it's a little bit of a nothing on the outside, but this is another texturing tool. This is a Merlin tool. They make these in I think 12 teeth per inch, 16 teeth per inch. You can get the fancy ones. This is a Wagner, which is the cheaper one that's out there. You just got to watch you don't run into your tool rest of the time. That's better. And by the time I hit that with the skew a little bit just to accent it, I think we'll be okay. And in the center. In those accents, they sit on the tail shot. I think that turned out pretty good. I don't know, whenever I turn the lines, you know, this has 2, but typically I would do 3, 5. They just tend to be a better way to go. Do you power sand or do you hand sand? Power sand, I mean using your drill. I mean, I would come in here with these little sanding discs in my drill, turn on my lathe at about 200, 300 RPM. It's going around, the drill's going around. I think it makes a good finish. This way, when you go this way, you still get the rings in it. So when I tend to put it on a drill, it cleans it up. Tom? So Tom is asking, whenever I do the texturing with the like the spiraling tool or the knurling, it roughs up the wood quite a bit. And his question was, do you go back and clean that up? The answer is yes. I do it a couple ways. I got a brass brush that sometimes I would use that brass brush on there just to clean it up. You don't want to use steel because leave that in there, you may get rust on your turning. Or I just hit it with some 400 or 600 just lightly. The other thing I do is, if I can find that Formica, is I'll take that Formica and run it over the front, right in there, and it burnishes it, cleans it up, smooths it out, pretty nice. So, okay, so we've turned the backside, we've got it cleaned up, we've got our foot turned. I think we're ready to turn it around again, right? Just say, let's see if I repeat it for the people on Zoom. Is that Coca-Cola is a good wood to use for embellishing because the oil and the hardness. Yeah, just a small piece. The thing I like about Formica is it's thin and you can get right in those cracks. Okay, so I'm declaring backside finished. So now we're going to remount it, expand out, bring up our tail stock, use that to help set it in the chuck jaws, expand it, expand it. Okay, haven't cracked it, so I'm good to go. Everything looks wonky because it's tilted and off center, but I still got this massive wood right in here that is going to be on center. I can probably see that, but I'm just going to mark it for the heck of it so that we know where that other piece is when we start turning that. I don't know if you could tell, but I was rubbing right there. So it's important to turn that piece even when you're back on center. Make sure you're not going to rub anywhere. Comes pretty close, but it should clear. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to take that center out. We're going to do the same type of thing. We got this dome convex surface here. We're going to start cutting in here, come in and just clean up that center. See what we got. So it's your question, do I know how thick the bottom is? I can tell that I've got quite a massive wood in this one, just visually. Some places out here I'm kind of thin. If you got your calipers, you know, you can use your 8/8 or whatever they are. You come in and go like that. I'm of the old school. I have one of our members, Dixie Smith, made these years ago. They're called the Missouri Micrometer. And I love this little tool, but it's basically just some rod that he soldered together, and then he's got some copper tubing here. And so when it's closed, there's zero space up here on this copper tubing. So, I'm sorry. Can you see now? I don't know which view we got going. Overhead. So this is, when it's closed down here, then I've got zero space on the copper tubing up here. And depending on the thickness, so, and making it, you know, you got to make it square. You can't make it cockeyed. Make it square right there. So I got about 1/4 of an inch in thickness there. Come down here toward the bottom, right in there. Geez, so I got almost a full inch down in here, so I can take that off. So I don't know whether you guys can see that or not. Got it? I'm sorry, Walt, can't hear you. Then you're too thin. If your chuck jaws show, you know it's time to quit. Hopefully you've got an expansion grip or something so they still hold. All right. So we're making this cut. We're coming in here. We're just going to clean this off. and get that looking better in the center. This one's got a pretty big center space on it. It would have been a good candidate for another off-center tilt. Close it up right there. Another little shear scrape coming back out. Clean. What I can do here again is I could use that little dome in the middle. Depending on how I wanted to go. I could leave the dome there and texture it and enhance it any way I want to go. The other thing you can do is flatten that off if you want to. Let's say you want to put a picture or something in the middle of that. So I would probably come in here and just, I'm chucked up now, so it should be good to go. That center. Square scraper, smooth on the bottom, wood burn feature. I could put that in the middle if I wanted to. Bouchon being a carver and things like that, maybe you carve a round seam, recess this here just a little bit, you know, and then you get a piece of basswood you carved on, put that in there. You could change it for the seasons. You could have a winter carving, a summer carving, a spring carving, anything like that. So, any questions on what we got so far? We're just about there. Matter of fact, I'm going to clear it there. So we started off, this is all on center with the ways and everything like that. We turned one of these off center and tilted. Could have turned more. I encourage you to turn multiple ones. I mean, you know, once you get started, you might as well dress it up, because I got quite a large area here that I did just on center again. So I would typically turn multiple off center tilted pieces and go. But I want to talk to you just a little bit about texturing that John did that really pulled me in. I don't know if you like this as much as I do, but I just love that textured metallic look that he got on some of those centerpieces. And the way you do that, believe it or not, is just with tissue paper. So you do it with tissue paper, like you use at Christmas time to stick in my gifts and things like that. So you take your tissue paper, you tear it up, don't cut it, tear it, because you want ragged edges in about 2-inch squares or smaller, depending on the size of the platter you're going to work with. And then you take this acrylic paste, and the acrylic paste comes in multiple consistencies. Some of it is very liquid, like Mod Podge, if you use that. It's pretty thin. Then you can get the medium ones, which have a heavier body. They don't run out, but they also don't build up. Like some of the heavier ones actually build up like a paste, and you can use a knife, shape them, sand them, you know, form them in multiple shapes. But you take this glaze or this gel net, you can thin it down a little bit, either with water or with another thinner gel like Mod Podge. You take that 2-inch piece of tissue paper and you coat it on one side with the gel paste. Then you put that on your surface, whatever you're gonna put it on, and you just scrunch it up. You don't have to be an artist, you're just scrunching it up. Once you scrunch it up and you get it where you kind of like it, then you can go back and cover the outside now with another coat of that acrylic gel paste. And you just keep doing that as you go, leaving it as rough as you want. But anytime you have a surface bent over in that, you want to take your brush and make sure it's fully coated so that everything is covered. Once that dries, then you just come back and this is the way he did it. You don't have to do it this way, make it your own. But we went back in with just black paint. We used acrylics, you know, things I get at not Harbor Freight, but Hobby Lobby, or one of those, very cheap stuff. Fully coat that thing. You may want to put some more acrylic on if you see that you got any pieces that aren't fully coated. You let that dry. And one thing you might want to consider, if you look at that one that's coming around, you may not want to put the paper completely to the outside of where you're putting the pattern. It's harder to paint that way. So if you leave a little bit of space between your paper that you put on and the outside rim, easier to paint, and then go from there. So once the black is dried and your acrylic is set up and you're happy, if you're not happy, go back and paint it a little bit more, mess with it. But then you come back and you can just put this paint on your finger, and it's just like a brush coat. If you're painting and you're finished and you do a brush, it's a dry brush effect on your work. You basically take,
Rubbing buff.
Oh, rubbing, you could use rubbing buff too, yeah. But a dry brush is basically, you put the paint on the brush, you take it 99% off, then you just go back with a stiff brush and hit the high spots. Do the same thing, put the paint on your finger, you just come back, hit those high spots so you don't cover everything. If you're unhappy with it, paint black, start over again. But I'm cheapy, I just use the paint I got for my carvings. I use the gold and the silver. You can invest in metallic paints if you want a little bit more pizzazz. You might try some of this iridescent paint, like they do with these, you put it on black and blow it, and it makes all kinds of heavenly pictures. You don't have to stick with black, if you're going for a copper effect or something, get you a little sponge and put on multiple colors, maybe on greens and reds or anything like that to get the copper. And that acrylic paste goes with anything. I mean, you can use paper. This is some pieces of rice that I put in there. I've used some wood chips, some sand, anything you can think of that you want to texture your piece with. So it's your call, it's your piece. That's a good way to go. Questions? Sure. And they down at J.C. Campbell, which is sweet, they got a room set aside for finishing. So you don't turn in there, and it's pretty dust free. If you're in my garage, it seems like as soon as I put on a finish, that's when I'm ready to go to the lathe and turn another piece. Or as soon as I'm finished turning, then I want it, and there's so much sawdust in the air. But yes, we finished those down there. Super. Well, the one I sent around is spray lacquer. On these, that's a good point though to bring up, is that once you paint the black on and you let it dry, if you could hit that with Krylon or a little bit of sealer maybe first, then that makes that other accent paint that you put on there not absorb in it so much, and it will stand proud, and then you can go back and do your final finish over that. But Krylon 1311 or something like that's a good satin finish that you can put on there. Other questions? Okay, thank you. You've been a great audience.